Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Dan Clement Show, a Christian political talk show. I'm your host, Dan Clemente, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. It is August 23rd, the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. I just want to get this one thing out of the way to start with because of the phone call I had on Monday. I had a couple phone calls that come in. I took a chance, took them. First one was great. The second one started out great, but the guy trolled me, and he got me. Again, I'm going back to my, I know some certain numbers that I will take. I haven't written down. Other ones I don't know, and I'm trying to make a list of them. I didn't capture the one from Missouri, which was a very good phone call. However, due to what happened on Monday, I had to put out again, I do not take live calls. All questions must be asked in the chat room. Now, if you are going to be on the YouTube chat room, I know you have to be signed up in order to participate in the chat. The same way at Blog Talk Radio. You have to sign up in order to participate in the chat. Now, you do not have to have a show. You know, just because it's Blog Talk Radio does not mean you have to produce a show or anything. In order to sign up, and you can sign up. And this is my rule of thumb, and this is how I've lived my life, my social life on the internet. I used to, a long time ago, I used to use pseudonyms, and I quit. I figured, look, these opinions are mine, they're coming from me, and people ought to know who I am. I'm not afraid of folks docking me. I'm not afraid of people coming after me. I'm putting my thoughts and things out there on the line because I am a public figure. Even back in the height of my social media days, which I still am in social media, and I'm actually I'm on more social media now. I switched and started using my real name instead of hiding behind. And it's up to you. This is a personal thing. This is my own personal opinion. You can take it for whatever it's worth. Honestly, I think if you hide behind a pseudonym or something like that and you're making these political comments out there, you're kind of cowardly. I have to say that. And I know our founding fathers and some of those after during the Constitution, the ratification of the Constitution, used pseudonyms or fake names, pen names, to write their material because they didn't want the backlash. And you know what? I think that's a decision each person needs to make. But in this day and age, where things can be so easily found out anyway, why not just save the people the hassle and come at them head on? And that's how I approach a lot of things in life. I come at them head on. Maybe that isn't the best way sometimes, but I've gotten where I'm at now because of that. I may not have as much as somebody else materially or whatever, but you know what? What I have is mine. What I have is ours as far as me and my wife, and we're pretty proud of what's happening. So anyway, let me just get that out of the way. I got to do something here. Okay. I took the autofocus off because that was bugging me. Because I'd raise my hands up or something like that, and then the lens would autofocus in on me. So I'd take care of that in a second. So the phone. Get back to the phone calls. Until I get a phone screener, and we can really start tracking these folks down. And I wish I would have captured that number. I got to see if there's a way that that's kept on the system. Blog Talk Radio, I don't know. But to write down the number, I was going to give the guy a call back and find out what his problem was. Whether he'd answer the phone or not, I don't know. And I do recognize the guy's voice afterwards. I really was listening to it. He was actually in my chat room on Blog Talk Radio, and I kept blocking him because of the things he was saying on one of my previous shows way back 6 months ago at least. And another person logged on with a different number, different name, and here this person had a couple different accounts on Blog Talk Radio. So I did report that person at the time, told Blog Talk Radio what was happening. I haven't seen him come onto my chat room since. I don't know if he's, I actually blocked him in my chat room. So maybe he's just blocked in mine, but I told him this guy is trolling people and he's being very vulgar, especially on these. You know, I'm family rated on my show. I have young folks that listen to my show, maybe not daily, but they do listen to it every now and then. Jake and Darby, their mom and dad go to church with me. You know, hi, if you're listening. You know, they listen. They don't need to hear that kind of garbage. I don't use profanity. I don't attack people personally. I attack their ideas. I may say something that they did was very foolish, or didn't have a lot of common sense with it, but I'm not attacking. I guess you could say that's a personal attack, but I only use that in the context of what someone has said. I don't just outright say, well, you're foolish and no common sense without any basis for that. So, and like I said, I don't deal in personal attacks. I just don't do it. I could easily do it. I really could. I was going to say it's not in my personality to do so, but it absolutely is. And sometimes I have to really restrain myself and work at that. But it's because I'm a Christian that I restrain myself and work at it. And it's because, unlike some folks on Facebook, like my Facebook antagonist, Kimberly Eaton. I know a couple Kims and Kimberlys on there. Kimberly Eaton, and I use her name because she's a public figure just like me. She wrote an editorial that was published. She has her name published on several groups, ethical humanist groups in the Valley here. So she is a public figure as far as I'm concerned. But their idea of debate is, because I'm not educated, I don't know what I'm talking about to begin with, so they can just use profanity and call me all sorts of names in the book and not refute my arguments. And that to me is bullying. If you're going to sit here and reasonably argue with me, fine. But if all you're going to do is swear at me and call me names and cast dispersions on me that I didn't play with a certain toy or I couldn't play with a certain toy because I couldn't figure it out when I was growing up, that's bullying. Now, I'm a big boy. I can handle it. I'm not going to, that type of bullying there, I'll take that all day long because, this tweaks them to no end because I don't stoop to their level. I think they're trying to bait me because I don't stoop to their level. I really do have the moral high ground. And that irks them to no end. And what really irks them, and I found this to be true, a truism for Dan, some of these educated progressives out there that are definitely on the anti-freedom side of things out there, they cannot stand it when who they consider to be an uneducated boob like me, a redneck, can stand up and debate them all day long. When it comes to debating things, when it comes to discussing things, I got some bulldog tenacity. You ask my son. I never give up until my voice breaks. Because I believe that freedom is that important to fight for. And this show is in defense of freedom, and that's what I titled the show today. But my whole program is in defense of freedom, not just religious freedom. I have a little bit of I take issue with folks that just label religious freedom or this type of freedom or that type of freedom. Folks, freedom's freedom. Either we fight for all freedoms, or they're slowly going to be one by one taken away from us. So we can't be just so blinded, have blinders on where we can't see anything else, and we have this this telescopic focus on one subject. Oh, we got to fight for religious freedom and religious freedom only. What about the rest of the freedoms? What about the key freedom on which all other freedoms hinge? It's called freedom of speech. We're going to talk about this today. I got a video of the Charlottesville council meeting that it wasn't an open forum type meeting. And yet Antifa and Black Lives Matter was in there. They were acting up. They were disrupting the actual meeting of what was going on. They even told these folks that there was another day that they're going to do this type of meeting where there's question and answer session. And they didn't want to hear it. Didn't want to hear it. So we're going to get into that and all other things along the same lines here. Folks, I like Bluehost. And Bluehost is an affiliate marketer of mine, and so Bluehost is sponsoring the show today through my affiliation with them. I not only like Bluehost, I use Bluehost, and I promote Bluehost. I really, really like their backside of their website, the backbones of it. I like how it works. I like how easy it is to put modules on to get them set up and get those adjusted. And they're having a back-to-school sale going on right now, starting at $2.95 a month. And for that $2.95 a month, you get free domain, you get free site builder, you get one-click WordPress install, you get 24/7 support. So if you like what you hear on this program, please go support my affiliate marketers on my website at thedanclemenshow.com. That's my show notes page. That's where I put all my show notes and actual audio of each program, the podcast audio of each program up there. And if you use Bluehost, like I said, there's podcasts out there that I listen to. There's other things with WordPress is great. I have a podcast I listen to about different WordPress plugins. So if you want to start a website for whatever reason, advance a hobby, speak your piece, as it were, or whatever it is, Bluehost is the place to go. Very inexpensive, well done, good customer support over there at Bluehost. Can't say enough about them, folks. Just really can't. Okay, today's daily Bible reading comes from the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, verses 5 through 8. And this is Isaiah speaking. So I said, woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a live coal, which he had taken with the tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth with it, and said, behold, this has touched your lips. Your iniquity is taken away. Your sin is purged. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Then I said, here am I, send me. Isaiah didn't feel he was up to the task because he was a man of unclean lips and living in a nation of unclean lips. But God cleansed him, made him ready for the work, and it made Isaiah realize that it was only through God that he was going to be able to carry out the work that God had set before him as a prophet of Israel. And again, folks, if you've never read the book of Isaiah, I encourage you to go read it. Beautiful book. A lot of prophecies in there about the Messiah, but also a lot of the struggles that God's people had in following God and God's pronouncements on them. It's a very, very good book to go read. Today's quote meal comes from Archbishop Oscar Romero of El Salvador. I just like saying it that way, folks. I heard a radio announcer years ago say that and said it in that way with that inflection. I just thought it was hilarious. I don't think it's an insult to the folks of El Salvador, but I just like to say it, El Salvador, every time I see it. May we never see the end results. But that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders. We are ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future, not our own. You know, I'll never see the end results of my work. Never. You know, I could build a house and I'll see that end result for building that house. But when we're talking about Christianity here, when we're talking about God's word, when we're talking about a worldview, when we're talking about ideologies, my work will never finish. Someone, and not that this work is original to me, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants that came before me. And even they would say that they would not see the end of their ideological work, that someone else is going to have to carry that on. And that's the same way with the gospel, folks. I'll never see the end of the work I've done. I don't know how many lives I've touched with the gospel. I've baptized 2 people, but I've taught a lot. I have taught a lot, and who knows? I planted the seed. Someone else may water it. God will give the increase. So we'll never ever see the end of our works, and I never want to get arrogant enough to think that I'm going to. You know, because this is something we just continually build on and build on and build on. Today's short Bible lesson comes from gewatkins.net by Foy Forehand. Whose glory is in their shame? And this passage is found over in Philippians chapter 3, verses 17 through 19. Let me read them real quick. But it's a good lesson. It's a sermon outline. It's good to go over and read that because this is to me, it's a very powerful lesson that speaks to those that actually work against God. Starting in verse 17, brethren, join in following my example and note those who walk, or those who so walk, as you have us for a pattern. For many walk, of whom I have told you often, and now tell you even weeping, that they are the enemies of the cross of Christ, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who set their mind on earthly things. So the only glory that these folks are going to have in the end are their shame. That's it. That's the only glory that they're going to have, period. And it just amazes me how these folks actually think that they're getting ahead by doing what they're doing. And they're really not. They're really sort of self-destructive, as it were. Okay, I got a bunch of stories in here today, and I want to start off with the Charlottesville City Council Goes Wild video. And this, let me get over here. This was posted on the 22nd, folks. This week's Charlottesville City Council meeting exploded when protesters clashed with police and yelled obscenities at the city's mayor. The protesters who attended the meeting Monday were upset with the city's handling of the white supremacist rally 2 weekends ago. Mayor Michael Singer, who had trouble talking over the screaming protesters at the meeting, eventually told them, "I have to call you out of order," and threatened to start expelling people who kept interrupting. His threat did little to calm the aggression in the meeting, as attendees yelled, "We don't care what you have to say, and we don't care about the rules." When Singer followed through and had police remove the protesters, the meeting descended even further chaos. Protesters resisted the police, trying to remove them from the meetings as they yelled, as the yells of fellow attendees of the mayor grew louder. Others pushed the police and tried to block them from removing those who had been expelled. Then one group of protesters went to the front of the room with a large sign and read, "Blood on your hands," prompting cheers of the rowdy crowd. Now, let me say something before I play this video, folks. The mayor and the city manager gave Antifa and Black Lives Matter groups permits to protest on the same day. What more do they want? What more do they want? I guess they wanted the white supremacists and the alt-right, I guess they wanted them arrested, even though they didn't start the violence. If you go back and look at the videos, I showed you them last week. I've actually watched more. Go out and do some research. You know, that's your homework. I'm not like the Young Turks that said, "Well, you go Google that." I'll give you the evidence and I'll show you the stuff I have when I have it. But I've actually watched more that just confirmed the videos I shared with you. Antifa and the groups on the alt-left that commit violence, they're the ones that started the vast majority of the what was going on. It's the same way in Boston. All the violence was on Antifa. The same way down in Phoenix last night at the Trump rally. I'm not going to talk about the Trump rally that much. I'm still working over some of the stuff in there. We'll probably talk a little bit about tomorrow. But again, it was Antifa that was protesting President Trump, and they were the ones. 4 people got arrested, and one of them, I thought it was kind of funny, one of them that was there protesting in support of Antifa got arrested because there was a bench warrant out for his arrest. You're there with the police presence protesting things, and you got a record. You got a bench warrant out for your arrest. How smart is that, folks? Must be a real brainiac out there, right? All right, let me get this set up, and we'll get this played here just in a second.
Of how an outside group can come into our town with such a message of hate.
Okay, we're gonna suspend, guys, everyone, with the right, listen. We're gonna have to suspend the meeting. The right place for this is gonna be Thursday night. This is gonna be Thursday night. I'm gonna have to call you to order. Okay, I'm gonna start expelling anybody. So, okay, ma'am, you've been called to order. Called to order. And I'm gonna ask the officers to identify anybody who speaks out without being recognized. You have one chance then you have to be called to order, then you'll be removed. And we've got folks who will do this. We don't want to do this. We want to get through the meeting. We have 20 spots for Matters by the Public. We also have a whole open-ended Matters by the Public after the meeting. We also have a town hall meeting on Thursday. What's the alternative? For everybody just to shout and scream? But that's not the rules. We don't do that just from the floor. Well, you understand you all can't be seen on camera and that the council wants these rules to be maintained. This is not the way to go about. So, okay, so ma'am, you're going to have, sir, you've been called to order, so you'll have to be removed. And we're just going to have to do this. We're going to have to do this. Okay. Okay, and, all right, so we're going to suspend the meeting.
Well, folks, that was the Charlottesville City Council meeting. It's a regular council meeting. People are allowed to come in there, but their rules are that you're not allowed to protest in there. They had actual city business to get through, and those were the rules of that meeting. They said Thursday, tomorrow, they're going to have a town hall meeting where these things can be addressed. And if you heard that one lady in the video, when he said, well, these are the rules, she goes, we don't care about your rules. These alt-left groups, Antifa, Black Lives Matters, and all those who support them, like Common Cause and Indivisible groups, Open Society, George Soros group, all these groups that support them, they do not care about the rule of law as long as it benefits them. If they think it's infringing on something that they're doing, even though it's a reasonable, like I said, the city has business it needs to conduct. The city government has legitimate business that they need to conduct. And so that's what that meeting was there for. It wasn't for them to come in there and act like a bunch of juvenile, or even, and that's an insult to juveniles, you know, act like a bunch of temper tantrum babies, toddlers out there. I don't care about your rules. I'm not going to do what you tell me. I don't care about your rules. You know what would happened to me if I'd have told that to my dad? I probably still wouldn't be sitting to this day. He'd have worn my hiney up that much. He really would have. Don't care about the rules. They don't care about the law as long as if the law is working in their favor, fine. If they think that the law isn't working in their favor, like free speech and the protections of free speech that we have in this country, they don't care about those. You know why? And I've had my intellectual elitist, especially on Facebook, try to explain this to me, that you cannot allow groups to say hate speech. And again, the Supreme Court, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I even cited it on shows before, the Supreme Court said that hate speech is a part of free speech. And again, I have to re-emphasize this a lot, that I'll even protect Antifa's right to say what they want to say, even though I would work the rest of my life trying to defeat that ideology. but they have a right to say what they want to say. They have a right to say what they think. The problem is when free speech goes into action. And I'm not saying that the alt-rights there at Charlottesville were inciting anything. Okay? If you are not intellectually grown up enough to stand there and allow those white supremacists, those white nationalists, or whatever you want, Nazis, KKK, whatever, if you're not intellectually mature enough to stand there, allow them to speak, and actually, even in your own mind, say, well, you know, this is wrong, and start formulating arguments to why this is wrong, then you have no business being there to protest to begin with. There are a lot of intellectually mature folks out there. And folks, I have contemporaries on Facebook that are quote-unquote educated, but they're so intellectually infantile. It boggles my mind. It boggles my mind with these folks that they, like the tearing down the statue. I saw somebody talk about that, on a meme, that the statue, that these folks aren't grown up enough to not allow this statue to offend them, that they had to tear it down and stomp on it. You know. And folks, this is where we're at in our society today. We actually, and I talked about it on the show yesterday, Antifa's actually put out where they don't want freedom of speech for capitalists, for constitutionalists, and for a whole host of other what most people would call mainstream America. They don't want us, and I put us in there because I'm a strict constitutionalist. I'm a strict constructionist when it comes to the Constitution. I'll get that out here in a second. I'm a Christian. I'm a conservative with libertarian leanings. And all those things add up in their group that I shouldn't speak. That I shouldn't speak. And folks, like I said, this is getting, it's getting out of hand. It's getting very, very dangerous out there. And as far as people being able to speak their minds, to have civil public discourse. Boston, that free speech rally up there, like I said, honestly, I don't care who attended it. I don't care at all. I support their right to say what they want to say. I support their right to speak their mind about politics or anything else. But what's happening in America here, and this is Kimberly Eaton has attacked me for this, and her minions have attacked me for this too, that because I allow these blankety blank white supremacists out there to spew this hate speech, since I support their freedom of speech to do so, that I'm supporting them because I'm defending their right to say what they want to say. And see, I've been reading this book, The Intimidation Game, by Miss Stossel. I can't remember her first, I think Kim? Is it Kim? I'm not sure. I have to bring the cover up and leave the cover up here so I know what I'm talking about. So I read the book, I have to take the cover off because I can't hold the book with that slippery cover on. And besides, I like the feel of the book in my hand when I'm reading it. But I'm going through I'm reading a chapter a day out of that, or maybe sometimes 2 chapters a day out of that book. And she's chronicling all this, everything is leading up to today. And she'd been talking about, and I've shared articles of other authors out there in the past week or so, where these the laws, whether you're Democrat or Republican, they put laws in place to restrict the political speech or the politics of the other party. And this has trickled down into our basic, God-given, can't take away rights. You know, the governments can't take away these rights unless we forfeit them ourselves by doing something stupid. You know, like killing somebody or maiming somebody in the name of our rights, right? Aggressing against somebody. And so this is all trickled down into this, and you have people like this, like that girl that was, or that woman, I don't know if it was a girl or a woman, screaming out, well, we don't care about your rules. Well, obviously Antifa doesn't care about the rules of polite society. Because polite society doesn't go along with their ideology. It just doesn't. And the fact of the matter is, Germany could have easily fallen to Antifa, because Antifa was actively fighting the Nazis before they came to power. There was a power struggle going on in Germany, and neither group was a good group. Neither group. And this idea, I've been fighting this on with some of the anti-freedom folks on Facebook too. This idea that, well, you know, Hitler was way worse because he committed genocide on the Jews. Now, I'm not saying that wasn't bad. That was totally evil. I mean, that was beyond evil. But don't sit there and tell me that that Antifa, that communist group Antifa, and their support of communism doesn't have just as much, if not more, blood on their hands when Stalin killed 50+ million people in Russia. So you can't tell me your hands aren't bloody. And you can't tell me you're not just as evil and just as wrong as the Nazis. You're the opposite side of the same dirty coin. And I'll continue to push that idea here. And again, we need to be in defense of freedom, folks. All freedoms. And especially the freedom of speech, because without the freedom of speech, we wouldn't have our other freedoms. We'd be walking around with our mouth shut and not being able to redress our grievances to government, not be able to rally the troops, as it were, rally the American citizenry behind an ideology or behind an issue. It doesn't have to be an ideology. It just could be just an issue. One of the biggest ones that we use our freedom of speech for is the Second Amendment, in protection of the Second Amendment. Again, the people's rights to bear arms will not be infringed, or shall not be infringed. And that's talking about the government infringement. And yet our right to exercise the Second Amendment is infringed all the time. And we speak out against these infringements. All the time. This idea of registering guns and having people have to get permits from the government to carry a gun out in public goes way back beyond the 19th century, way back beyond the last century. But you know which country used that to its most effect besides Russia and communism? It was Nazi Germany. People registering the guns. People getting permits to have them. That gave them a huge mailing list, as it were, and we call mailing list now. It was a hit list back then, to go over and confiscate the guns out of the hands of the citizens. Because Hitler wasn't an idiot. He knew that the citizens remained armed, that if they took it in their heads to depose him, there wouldn't be very little he could do about it, because they were armed. They were able to protect themselves. Most tyrants know this, folks. They're not idiots. They don't want to be shot back. Most criminals know this. If you're in a state that allows concealed carry, or I wish they all would just go to constitutional carry, saying, yeah, like I said, I'll submit to a background check. But whether I carry a gun out in public should be my business. And I should be the only one that knows that I'm allowed to. You know what I mean? Everybody should be allowed to, but I'm the only one that knows if I do or not. Just like anybody else. So see how the First Amendment, how freedom of speech actually works into that in defense of our other freedoms and liberties. If you take freedom of speech away, we will not be able to defend our other liberties and our other freedoms that we have that are God-given to us. So we need to defend all freedom, not just religious freedom or freedom of expression or whatever. All freedoms need to be defended, especially the freedom of speech. I'm not going to get into some of these articles here, but I thought this was kind of funny. You gotta love Democrats. Bless their little hearts. They try. They really do. At what? I have no idea. This is an article by Ray Saavedra from the Daily Caller, August 22nd. Democrats. People don't care about Russia. A Democrat senator admitted Tuesday that his constituents don't care about the ongoing investigation in alleged Russian interference during the 2016 presidential election. Democrat Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy told MSNBC NBC's Andrea Mitchell that after completing a walking tour of his state, he learned his constituents didn't care about the Russian probe. Well, no duh. Most of the time, folks, most of the time, your constituents are smarter than you are. I mean, that's a fact. Most of the time, and there's always going to be some wisecracker in the crowd that's smarter than you at something. Maybe at what you're doing. You know, and as Americans that are freedom loving and liberty loving, yeah, we're actually going to be better on these type of issues than the politicians because we're not being bought off. The constituents aren't being bought off. It's the politicians that seem to be bought off. They're getting that Washington grind mill or grist mill down there, and they go off the reservation. So I thought that was kind of funny that a Democrat's admitting that after he walked through his state up in Connecticut, people don't care about the Russian thing. There's nothing to it. Never has been, never will be. You know, it's just like I was watching news this morning. This isn't a news item, but on One American News Network, had a story there where Senator Blumenthal, Massachusetts, was still attacking President Trump for the emoluments clause, even though Trump divested himself and put the business in the hands of his children, the day-to-day running, the ownership, the whole 9 yards, so he could concentrate on everything and promised if he made money off of foreigners for this in his hotels, that he'd donate that. He's not even taking his salary. He's putting that back in the Treasury, which I think he should give that to charity, but that's up to him to do. So he's not even taking the presidential salary. But that doesn't matter. Blumenthal's talking about the emoluments clause, and I read something. I still want to read through this. I didn't get a chance to read through it because I was like 45 minutes before the show. It's rather long. Mark Stein, he's a lawyer, and he has a blog site, and I'm starting to read through it, and I could not believe all the conflict of interest. Well, maybe I could believe it. I do believe it. I'm just saying it for effect. All the conflict of interest of Senator Blumenthal when it comes to the emoluments clause. It was amazing, the hypocrisy of this man. It really is. I get stunned. You know, every day I see a new level of hypocrisy by politicians in Washington, D.C. I really do. And when I do, I'm like, I thought I was amazed the day before, but now I read this and I'm even more amazed. I don't know where that's going to end. Maybe that work will never end. Maybe that work of being amazed will go on past my lifetime. Who knows? I thought I'd share that with you. Another one in here, big labor donates to Southern Poverty Law Center following Charlottesville. Now, let me get over into that article there. Now we know, and this is something that's coming out in my reading of The Intimidation Game, that there's been two big deep pocket organizations or class of organizations. One is union labor or labor in general, and one is capitalist. Okay, and they both are heavy contributors to political parties, to candidates, to PACs, super PACs, the whole 9 yards. And it's always been up until the reversal of McCain-Feingold, when the Supreme Court said, and literally, and I don't know where the ambiguity comes in this, that money is speech. Because I'm not even be a political operative. Maybe I'm part of a group, a nonprofit group that wants to get a message out about swamplands in PA and how the government is destroying them. Whatever it is, you just put that in there. Whatever your cause is in there, and websites today. You got websites. They cost money to. So, faxing is getting kind of old-fashioned, but if you're still faxing, that costs money. If you want to print material up and hand it out at rallies and stuff like that, or on the street or stuff, that costs money. And so the Supreme Court looked at that and said, money is absolutely speech, because sometimes you can't, sometimes you don't have the, and I'm not talking about the money wherewithal, but you do not have the wherewithal to be an orator. Orator. Someone that speechifies. You don't have that gift to be able to get up in front of people and deliver a speech. But what can you do? Well, you can get these pamphlets printed up, passed out, and that's a excuse me, that's an American tradition that goes back to the Thomas Paine, The Revolutionary Times. Folks would get these pamphlets printed up with their political views, and a lot of times they were stating their political views and why they opposed somebody else's political views, and went around passing them out. That cost them money. Money has always been part of free speech. Always has, always will, but the left doesn't see it that way. The left and unions don't see it that way. They want to equate that with corruption. Oh, this money and free speech, that's just corrupt. That's a corrupting power. For who? Corrupting for who? If I just have a website set up and I'm putting out material on that website, sending PDFs, I gotta have electricity, lights in the office, whatever, office equipment that money has to be spent on for me to engage in my free speech activity. You see where I'm getting here? Where's the corruption in that? Where's the corruption in that? The corruption comes when you have politicians trying to stifle free speech. That they've been smacked down time and time again by the Supreme Court, saying that is unconstitutional. You can't do that over the years. And McCain-Feingold was one of them. I'm glad they overturned that. But the unions aren't glad about that, because there are some deep pocket donors out there that if they wanted to, and they don't. You go to Open Secrets and check this out. There's a lot of deep pocket donors out there that are conservatives that don't give a lot to political campaigns, but if they did, they would swamp what the unions could do. And that's what the unions are afraid of. Under McCain-Feingold, the unions weren't restricted. They weren't restricted. So here was another law, and John McCain was a part of that. And people that call him a conservative, they need their heads examined. They really do. They need to sit down on a couch and talk to a shrink for a little bit. McCain's never been a conservative. He's been a moderate at best. And a maverick. Oh, I'm a maverick. Yeah. You know what a maverick is? It's a wild horse that absolutely refuses to be controlled by their own morals or anybody else's. That's what John McCain is. He's a loose cannon more than he is a maverick. But you see where I'm getting at here. So we have Big Labor donating to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is one of the biggest anti-freedom groups in the country. And people rely on them for labeling of groups. Constitution Party. You guys like the Constitution too much and you teach too much American history. You hate it. You're a hater. You're labeled a hate group. That one, I'll never get. But the thing is, with folks out there today that don't dig below the surface of things, they're going to listen to Southern Poverty Law Center and say, you know what? I hear about this Constitution Party. I hear about this Dan Clements on the Dan Clements Show saying he's a member of the Constitution Party and supports their platform. But, you know, Southern Poverty Law Center said that these folks are a bunch of haters. So I'm just going to stay away from them. And that's got a chilling effect on political speech. And this is part of this intimidation game that's going on out there. And the Big Labor donating to SPLC out there is only going to advance that even further. This group has been discredited so many times. They from what the history I understand, when they first started off, that they did some good. They're a law firm, and they were talking, you know, they were taking up poverty cases and stuff, segregation, racist cases, stuff like this down south. But they've went well beyond their original scope of things. And so you need to be aware of these things. And this is a big problem, because they're getting a big infusion of cash, because I guess the donors were drying up because people were thinking and looking like, you know, I don't agree. You know, I went, you know, someone that might have actually went and checked. You know, I went over just out of curiosity. I got a computer, got some time in the evening while I'm watching sports or something, you know, waiting for the ball to be kicked off or whatever. I'm going to check out this Constitution Party, read their platform, read, you know, what they're all about, and see and check out for myself. And they get that. Usually when people do that, I've had actually folks that discredited, you know, out of hand, without even knowing who we were, the Constitution Party. Not that I changed their minds of coming over the Constitution Party. I wish they would have. But they went and read the Constitution Party platform and what we stand for. And they come back and you say, you know what? You guys are getting a bad rap. You know, they actually apologize for saying, you know, I was thinking the same way too. And, you know, that's all I can ask for is someone to actually honestly look at things, whether it changed their mind or not. I just want them to honestly look at the information and make up their own minds. And so there we have somebody, may not be a total convert, but we have somebody out there that's not going to listen to the Southern Poverty Law Center when they say the Constitution Party is a hate group. And the thing with hate, and I said this at the top of the show, and I'll continue to beat this drum until people get this in their heads. Hate is very subjective. It really is. Someone can hate on me, and they have in the past, and they will in the future. They can hate on me all I want, but you know what? All they want. But you know what? I don't let it affect me. I don't let them live rent-free in my head. I don't let it affect the way I think. I don't let it affect the way I vote or anything, any other aspect of my life. I do not give it credibility. I do not give their hate credibility. I just flat out refuse to do it. You can hate on me all you want, but guess what? Doesn't bother me a bit. Because you know what? The hate will eventually destroy the hater. Always has, always will. And it'll really, really destroy the hater quicker if you don't give it any credence, if you don't let it affect you. Sure, you can get upset a little bit about it. You know, and I wouldn't be human if I said I didn't get upset every now and then when someone was throwing some hateful stuff at me. But you know what? I stand back, take a breath, pull up my big boy pants, and go about my business. And if I want to respond to it, I don't respond in kind. Haters hate that. Haters hate a lot of things. But haters hate when you don't respond in kind. They're baiting you with using profanity, with calling you names. That's exactly what they're doing, is they're baiting you. And those folks are hateful of you and your ideology, and eventually they forget about your ideology and they're just hateful for you because you don't agree with them. For whatever reason, they're hateful of you because you don't agree with them. And folks that are in the freedom, in defense of freedom, and in the, that want to promote freedom, want to protect it for our generation and generations to come, that is the best weapon you can have against these haters, is you don't let them get to you. I remember one guy, and he was dead serious about this. We were talking about something, and he was getting upset, and he goes, "Your mama wears combat boots." And I'm like, "Yeah, she did it one time. She was in the Navy." Yep, my mom wore combat boots. So did my dad. He wore combat boots too. You want to insult him? Don't let them get to you. And this is what's happening, especially in the blogosphere out there, or in the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Gab, and Minds.com. Not so much on Gab and Minds.com because the Antifa, the anti-freedom folks in the alt-left and in the alt-right, but the anti-freedom folks out there don't like these new platforms because it's not allowed on there. These platforms are open to anybody. Gab AI, Minds.com, VidMe, they're open up to anybody out there. They still have their terms of service that you need to abide by. But they're open up to anybody. But the reason why they don't want to go on there is because they see all of these folks that want to defend freedom, that don't believe that what they're saying is true. And it's not. I know there's a couple on there. I've seen some very anti-freedom things said on Minds.com, not so much on Gab AI. And I have seen some very progressive stuff on VidMe. But the point I'm making here is Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, for a certain extent, are known quantities to the anti-freedom folks out there. They know that if they're on the right side of the anti-freedom issue, or the left side, whichever way. You see how I did that? If they know that they're speaking the right speech, that Facebook and Twitter and YouTube are going to support what they're saying. They're going to support that because they know that YouTube channels have been deplatformed, and they know folks have been banned from Twitter. Google's been doing this. Google's in the middle of a huge lawsuit now, discrimination lawsuit, and it could be huge. From what I've seen on the news this morning, it's developing into a class action lawsuit. You know, who knows where that's going to go. But they are trying, these corporations, Facebook, Google, who owns YouTube, and Twitter, they're corporations. They're publicly traded. Matter of fact, I looked at the stock on Twitter the other day, or yesterday actually, because Valerie Plame, the outed CIA agent during the Bush administration, was doing a GoFundMe to try to raise enough money to buy Twitter at like 1 point something billion dollars, and the stocks are at 16 cents a share. That's penny stock territory, and I never thought I'd ever see Twitter fall down to penny stock. But anyway, they know that the corporate ideas of these groups support Antifa, anti-freedom agenda completely. They support that completely. And it amazes me, it really does amaze me, and I think I just lost my feed to Blog Talk Radio. I don't know yet. For some reason my Firefox crashed, and well, I've just restarted it up on my main computer. I'm sorry if these things happen. I know that my let's see here, this connecting again. Oh, hang on a second, folks. Give me a couple seconds here. Turning it down just a second to let that connect. I do apologize.
Start your show now, press 1. To hear important instructions, press 2.
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we are reconnecting you now.
Okay, they reconnected me on that. I know my YouTube didn't get disconnected because you have to physically, oh. What? Okay, anyway, let me keep going on because it's, I'll have to check the video out. I may have to re-upload this whole thing to YouTube. I don't know why that happened. It happens every now and then, just irks me to no end. Anyway. So we really have to defend freedom. And there's a lot of forces out there that are fighting against freedom because it doesn't fit with their agenda. If people are free, they can't control them. If they can't control them, they won't get elected. They won't be able to do all the dastardly, dirty things they want to do to the country through laws or whatever else. Let's see here. Oh, I got this one article. I only have 5 minutes left, but I want to read the beginning of it. And we might get into it a little bit more tomorrow. Where is that? The fighting. This is an article over by Bill Wirtz over at FEE.org, Foundation for Economic Freedom. Now, it's a libertarian site. I'll tell you that right now. They espouse Austrian economics over there. And Bill, he doesn't like Trump. You can tell in the first part of this that he got Charlottesville wrong. But I want to get down into the bottom of it. And it's the frightening rise of Slovakian National Socialism. And Bill talks about in the first paragraph, in the aftermath of the events in Charlottesville, the debate on the problematic nature of the alt-right has been relaunched. In this mix of Trump supporting Klan members, ethno-nationalists, and outright Nazis, it's hard to see the long-term implications of these movements. So, and I'll give people a little bit of rope to hang themselves. But Bill is totally wrong on that. I'm sorry, there's a lot of people out there totally wrong on Trump on this whole issue just because he condemned all the violence and all the violent groups that were in there. There's a lot of folks on the left, and there's a lot of libertarians out there that are bad-mouthing Trump and what he claimed, you know, what he was talking about there. And again, he's wrong here. But when he goes down here, later on in the article, he says, communism and the rise of National Socialism. In post-World War II era of communist rule in Czechoslovakia, extremism of any kind was suppressed and pushed underground. However, after 1989 revolution and more pronouncedly, in the first years of Slovak independence, the presence of neo-Nazis' ideology started to grow. Last week's Charlottesville March provided many Slovaks with an eerie reminder of their own 2000s experience. It was during this time when one of the movement's centerpieces, actor Marian Kotleba, organized several rallies and protest marches with his entourage. He paraded in the streets carrying the same tiki torches and dressed in black uniforms inspired by the Helenka Guard and the Slavic wartime Nazi lapdogs. It was at this time that that quote, Liba's movement tried to morph into a political party, but it was prevented from doing so by the judiciary. So we see here over in Slovakia, and it goes on down, talks about some more of the issues and problems that they were having over there. But we see that while Slovakia was under communist rule, they suppressed the neo-Nazis. But as soon as communist rule left, the neo-Nazis felt that they had a voice and that they could be heard and bring their ideas back to the forefront. So this is just another example of how communism, a collectivist ideal, and National Socialism, Nazis, a collectivist ideology, have been clashing for a long, long time. Probably well over 100 years. Have been clashing. And like I said, they're the different side of the same dirty coin. And Antifa has no more moral high ground than the Nazis or white supremacists or white nationalists. And the only thing I see in Charlottesville that maybe the alt-right had a leg up in is that they didn't start the violence. They came prepared for violence because they know their enemy. And going back real quick, because I got to end the show here in about 2 minutes, going back to the Charlottesville council meeting, what did they expect when they gave permits to Antifa and Black Lives Matter? Wouldn't it have been better for them not to give them permits, have the police make a barricade around there, and if you want to go and protest, you don't get to take backpack ins, you don't get to take sticks in with your flags, and you got to unmask. The mask comes off if you want to go in and get close to the protesting and actually hear what they're trying to say. That would have worked a whole lot better, but you know what? The Democrats in Charlottesville chose to go the other way. Because Democrats, nationally, locally, Democrats as a philosophy will hitch their wagon to any group that they think will help destroy what they call the, capitalist, bourgeoisie, this freedom, to destroy the freedom we have. Because without that freedom, they don't have control, folks. They really, really don't. Well, folks, it's coming up to the end of the show. I'm going to have to go back and do a little bit of editing here. I do apologize for that. This has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your Constitution Warrior member. If you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless, folks, and we'll see you tomorrow at noon for the Thursday edition.